What's going on, guys? We are breaking down the Bees. Bellator 260, obviously action-packed weekend throughout. PFL, Bellator, UFC, and then, sandwiched right in the middle of the PFL card and the UFC, you have the Bellator. Is there going to be an after effect? Are people going to be excited for it? This is one of the Bellator's best offerings in a long time. It's stacked. That's one thing that Bellator is doing now. There used to be a time they'd go to Uckensville, Connecticut, where they're here again, the Mohegan Sun, and the main card would be good. The main card before fights, totally packaged for a TV broadcast, and then the prelims would be local guys that could sell tickets. But now it's like it's almost exclusively a TV product. Of course, they've got their main card that airs on TV, but the prelims are online and they're picking up a lot of steam. They put a lot of these guys that are building up, great guys, former All-Americans. We're going to talk about a lot of All-Americans on this card, and some decent level of prospects. As such, the bookies are offering lines for all the fights. As such, we need to talk about them all. So let's start at the bottom. We got Alex Polizzi taking on Gustavo Trujillo. Alex Polizzi coming in as about a minus 240 favorite over Trujillo, and I completely understand why. It makes a lot of sense. Polizzi's not exactly the biggest light heavyweight going, being that he only stands about 6 feet tall. Generally gives a little bit of size and reach away to his opponents, but he's a big, tough, sturdy dude who's already doing a lot of good stuff in Bellator, improving himself. Still only 29 years old, and the key here is going to be his wrestling. So you look at his career so far, he's undefeated as an amateur. He was actually a really good standout wrestler. So prior to even turning pro, just go over some of his stats. He's a former state champion in high school, right? Goes 45-0 his senior year, gives up one takedown the entire year. Just absolutely crushes high school. He ends up going to Northwestern, where he is a 3-time NCAA D1 tournament qualifier. So pretty decent wrestling career, but leaves something to be desired. As far as how he translates to MMA, pretty solid. I mean, he uses that wrestling base to grind away at guys. And being that he's the smaller guy at 6 feet tall, he's able to use his chin, get under guys, use that lower center of gravity, and smother them up against the cage. He won the LFA title, beating Jamal Pogues, part of signing with Bellator. So goes out there, solid effort, heel hooks him in the first round, showing that he's got a ground game, a little bit of grappling to add to that wrestling. Always good, definitely improving. Bellator comes in, signs him, and right off the hop, they give him Rafael Carvalho. Now, this is a tough matchup because, again, Polizzi is just a developing wrestler. Just won the LFA title, don't get me wrong, but Carvalho is a former world champion. He was a former Bellator middleweight champ. He is moving up a weight class, but tough task for Polizzi. And Polizzi just smothered him against the cage the entire time. Carvalho couldn't go anywhere. It was a good game plan in terms of winning. Wasn't exactly the most exciting thing going, but it showed that he's a strong guy that's able of controlling opponents. His next fight against Julia Inglikas. Inglikas is a solid wrestler himself, also a better athlete and a slightly better striker. So the fight generally stays standing. Inglikas is able to chip away at him. This is a spot where he's got to go back to his wrestling. He understands that fully. He's said in interviews that he plans on using that grind and going back to the basics, going back to what works for him, and that's using the wrestling. And I think that's going to be ultra effective. Gustavo Trujillo, he's a Cuban import, actually. He was a former Cuban national, ends up defecting, coming to Miami. We've seen the story many of times. But unlike a Yoel Romero, this guy doesn't have any wrestling in his back pocket. Yoel came over, he was the Olympic silver medalist. Alexis Villa came over, he was the Olympic bronze medalist. Like, these guys had wrestled internationally. Trujillo comes over, and he seems to have more of a striking base. But again, he's not one of these Olympic-level boxers that came out of the country, after an Olympic run or a run at the amateurs, in boxing or wrestling, the two notable things. He's actually a guy that's trained MMA in Cuba. Right? There are small little pockets of areas that they do train a little, because they got the judo, they got the wrestling, they got the boxing. These guys get together and they mix it all together. And you know what? They can strike and they can wrestle and they got the willingness and they got good, they've got good chins on them. The one thing is they've got no jiu-jitsu. And so when they do eventually end up on their back, they're just absolutely fishes out of the water. And that's kind of his thing, right? I mean, he turns pro, he wins his first fight by TKO in Kombache, and it's like, it's a good performance, man. This guy's really athletic. He moves well, and he's got a lot of power in the right hand. He loves flashing that flying knee. He loves just absolutely, bum rushing into the pocket and letting his hands go. And he smokes this Wesley Castillo, who's 0-1. Fair enough. The very next fight against Denzel Freeman, you see where you can grind against this guy. Now, he actually leaves MMA briefly and signs to fight bare knuckle boxing, and he's 2-0 for the BKFC organization. Could have probably stayed with the BKFC organization. Why he's coming back to MMA for this fight, not quite sure. But again, he's been bare knuckle boxing. He's a striker at heart. And the one time that you do see him on his back, or the few times that you do see him on his back, he just kind of does not look like he's comfortable there. So really, we've got a matchup of a good, solid collegiate wrestler, 3-time, not All-American, but qualified for the D1 tournament. So, pretty solid. And a former state champion, coming in against a Cuban striker, athletic, explosive, capable of delivering some big power. But I think Polizzi is going to roll with it. I don't think he's going to get stunned in there. He's got a solid enough chin. He's a durable enough guy that eventually he's going to complete these takedowns. And if he doesn't complete the takedowns, he's just going to smother him up against the cage. So I got Polizzi. I'd like to say Polizzi by decision, but honestly, he's got a decent submission game as well. I could see him getting that sub. And I don't think Bellator is going to offer you a sub play on Polizzi. So the play would just be him. We're going to end up parlaying him up a little bit here. But again, it's a stylistical clash, one that should favor Alex Polizzi. Moving on to the next fight, we got Amanda Bell versus Marina Kina. You basically don't want any part of this, right? Marina was actually at one time heavily touted to be a legitimate prospect. She's a 6-time world Sambo champion. She's a former European Sambo champion. She's a former multiple-time Russian Sambo champion. Her husband, again, is like a 7-time world Sambo champion. He also fought in the last PFL tournament. Didn't do particularly well, but again, she's out of a good lineage, good pedigree. Husband's a pro fighter, has fought in some decent guys. Sky looks to certainly be the limit for her. And Fight Nights Global, they give her they bring her along. She wins her first 4 fights, sets up this title fight against Lilian Joshua. Now, I remember the fight like it was yesterday. I'm thinking this girl's legitimate. She's got a solid Sambo background. She's got all the pedigree in the world. At this weight class and against the level of competition that they're matching her up against, she's going to be able to just get them to the ground and just put a mauling on them. If the fight, for whatever reason, stays standing, that's okay. Sambo specialist. She's going to be able to wing those hands. She looks so lost against Joshua. It's a 5-round fight. Goes 25 minutes. Awful fight to watch. But again, once the takedowns don't work, she's just like, she's short. She's got no reach, and she's very uncomfortable letting her hands go. And Joshua just puts a masterclass performance against her and wins the Fight Nights Global title. We saw what happened to Lilian Joshua when she went beyond that, went to the UFC, really did, kind of run out of steam. But fair, and maybe you give Marina a pass on it. So then she signs with Bellator and she takes on Janae Harding. Now, for what it's worth, she was a pretty big favorite over Joshua, and then she debuts against Janae Harding as a -225. So even though she just lost, we give her a pass, right? It was a 5-round fight, first time you lost, and a gut check performance. You're going to go back to the drawing board. She still got all that Sambo pedigree, but my God, man, the Janae Harding is the exact same thing. She can't get these takedowns, and once she can't get these takedowns, she looks unbelievably lost in there. I don't know how she won all of these Sambo accolades. I really don't. As far as how it translates to MMA, it doesn't translate to MMA. And again, difficult to watch. That fight in itself was 2.5 years, little over 2 years ago. She pulled out of a fight with Jessica Borga, a year ago, and then we haven't seen her since. So she's no spring chicken, man. She's 33 years old. She's about to turn 34 years old. I think her birthday's coming up. Maybe his birthday's today. Today the 12th? Oh, no. Birthday's last month. Regardless, she just turns 33 years old. I don't see her getting any better. She has all of this lifetime of Sambo. She's clearly trained Sambo, and it hasn't translated for her into MMA. And her husband, realistically, he's the same way. He was an excellent Sambo fighter. It just hasn't translated into the world of mixed martial arts. At 33, does she get better? I don't think so. If she was 24, 25, 26, a year and a half off, would do her wonders. But in this spot, I just don't think so. The key where I don't want to just randomly fade her is that we've got Amanda Bell, who's equally as fadeable. Now, Amanda Bell's got a 7-7 record for a reason. When she shows up, talented. When she doesn't show up, which is 50% of the time, she just allows herself to go into a bad position and then kind of looks for a way out. That's one knock on her. When you look at the girls that she's lost to, right? As an amateur, Taylor Garado, who's in the PFL tournament right now, she beat Jessamine Duke, UFC veteran. As a pro, Tamika Branks, Charmaine Tweet, Megan Anderson, Talita Noguera, Arlene Blankow, Leslie Smith. Those are very solid losses. I'm not going to fault you. Well, what about the wins? The wins aren't so bad either. She beats Brittany Elkin twice, who's headlining the PFL card against Clarissa Shields and taking a lot of money, by the way. In hindsight, I can watch this video and laugh if Brittany Elkin wins. I won't laugh. I'll cry. Brittany Elkin, don't win. Regardless, beats her twice, knocks out Marina Shafir, which was Ronda Rousey's top training partner and a former high-level judo standout, right? Knocks her out in 36 seconds. It's another solid victory. Gabriella Holloway, Bellator veteran, very big girl. Amber Leibrock, who's fought in some top promotions. Janae Harding, who we just talked about, who beat Marina, and is on a solid little roll right now. The wins are credible too. The losses are credible. One thing's for certain. She's got 14 pro fights. She's got a lot more experience than Marina. She's fought a lot higher level than Marina. And again, if she doesn't show up, well, then she gets taken down. Maybe Marina puts her in a compromising submission. Maybe she gets caught by submission before she gets going. But if she does show up, and I'm gonna lean on she shows up here. she should just be able to stuff these takedowns and just brawl her up. Like, check her out, man. She looks like Rosie the Riveter. She's ripped, like not shredded up ripped, but I just mean like thick, strong, powerful girl, and will bulldog you. And that seems to be what gets in Marina's head and causes her to bail on these takedowns and just, look flimsy in there, so to speak. So I'm going to go with Amanda Bell. But again, this is not a fight that I would put a ton of investment on because we're going with Amanda Bell, 7-7. And again, there's a reason for that. Lucas Brennan versus Matthew Skibiki. This should be a walk in the park. I mean, Lucas Brennan's a second-generation MMA fighter. His father, Chris Brennan, was the Southside Strangler, fought in the UFC, fought in Pride, was a badass of the SoCal fight scene for a long time. Had a notorious fight with Dana White back in the day over a Joe Stevenson bout. But regardless, his old man is like an OG legend of the fight game in Southern California, and this kid is grown up around the fight scene. When he was a kid, his dad was still fighting, and his dad's one of these guys that does have skills everywhere. Doesn't have any knockouts. I think he's got one career knockout, but was just like a submission whiz and was one of these smart guys, high ring IQ for the time. Since then, he's been coaching Chris, and Chris has been making a lot of Lucas has been making a lot of improvements. Now, he's only 21 years old, and to me, that's always a red flag because I don't like putting a ton of investment again on these kids that are so young. They need to taste defeat. They need to taste, a setback, overcome some adversity, go back to the drawing board. Do you really want to be a fighter? Do you want this? Is this for you? And do all these things. But in his case, he's probably a little more advanced than the average 21-year-old because he's been doing, jiu-jitsu his entire life. He's been doing mixed martial arts for a great portion of his life. Undefeated as an amateur, turns professional. Bellator signs him right away. So, he's just like AJ McKee. AJ McKee, I think, fought on the regional scene once or twice and then got scooped up by Bellator. But he's a second-generation MMA fighter. And again, you see these guys have like such an advancement on the field because this is not, well, I was doing karate when I was 7. It was like my dad was competing at the highest level and training with guys who are at the highest level since I was a kid. I was surrounded with it. So Bellator realizes he's got some potential. They sign him, and they've matched him up soft. Thomas Lopez 1-4, subbed in the first round. That's what you do against 1-4 guys if you're supposed to be legit. Jacob Landon 0-2, subbed in the first round. This is what you do at that level of competition. Will Smith, not that Will Smith, 3-1, a little bit better, and so he makes it into the second round. But Lucas TKOs him as well. And then Andrew Salas, 6-4. Again, you've seen the development, right? 6-4, 10-fight veteran. He's still only 20 years old at the time. And now he's got to settle for a decision. But that's what he needs. He doesn't need to be smoking guys out in the first round. He needs to be banking rounds. So his ground game's legit, just like his old man. His striking's a lot better than the old man's was, as you could probably guess. Like, generation gaps for any sport, you're going to get a little bit better. Like, this kid is a little more refined. But again, at 21 years old, there's a lot of room to grow still. You don't want to match him along too far. And so now you got Matthew Skibby, who's 4-3. And this is a big time step backwards for this kid, right? I mean, I would honestly argue that his last fight was probably a little bit tougher. Skibby, though, has a winning record. And, this is a guy that started off 4-0. But again, you look on the surface, right? He's out of Maryland. He was 3-3 as an amateur, and he lost to Sodiq Youssef as an amateur. So, I mean, he was competing at a good level, but he's coming up shy, right? As a pro, the losses 2-5, or first win 2-5, moves to 2-0, 0-0, moves to 3-0 against a 1-2, moves to 4-0 against a 2-2. Okay, he's 4-0, hasn't tested himself, fair. And unlike Lucas, who's now taking that next level, Skibby falls back from that next level. He loses his next fight, a split decision, to a 1-4 opponent. A 1-4 opponent. He's 4-0. Homie's 1-4. Loses a split decision because, quite frankly, he's actually not that good. So then they bring him to Ontario, and I actually watched him fight live. He took on a friend of mine named Michael Imperato. Now, Mike Imperato is a BJJ black belt. He does have good submissions, but the last run of fights for Imperato, he does not buzzsaw through people like they don't exist. And like, he walked right through Skibiki like it was just was an effortless outing. Like, I'm going to probably go ahead and say probably one of the easiest fights of his entire career. So fair, guy just lost to a 1-4 opponent, right? Imperato's going to walk through him, and he does. And then he goes against Justin Vasquez, a 5-2 opponent in his next fight. And then after the second round, says a no mas. I don't want to fight no more. So is this guy 3-fight losing streak? Hasn't competed at that level. Is this guy going to be the guy that upsets Lucas Brennan? No, I don't think so. And the odds makers don't think so as well. Lucas Brennan's a 9-1 favorite. I'm not telling you anything you don't know at this point. Lucas Brennan will get upset at some point. Somebody will come along. His wrestling will be too good. They'll be able to neutralize his submission threat. They'll have slightly better striking than him. One of these All-American guys, be able to grind him a little bit. Matthew Skibby, not that guy. So, I mean, yeah, the 9-1 favorite likely rolls here. Does that add you anything on a parlay? Not really. If you're doing a 12-fight parlay, Yeah, it actually does add something because of the amount of odds that are on it at that point. But as far as like a short fight parlay, it's not as far as betting it straight up. Like, what could you do? Bet $900 to win $100. If you're rich, I guess it makes sense. But even then, that's probably how you lose your money if you're rich. Don't take the stupid bets because it is an MMA fight at the end of the day, and he's 21 years old at the end of the day. But I think we're all on the same page here. He should roll. This one's a little bit tougher. Nick Newell versus Bobby King, just because, I mean, listen, Nick Newell has one hand. I think that's something that you're always going to have to bring up. I mean, that's kind of his, I don't want to say claim to fame. He's an excellent fighter, but the reason why there's so much notoriety towards him is he's the only guy, an amputee, a single amputee going out there and competing at high level mixed martial arts. And he is an excellent fighter. He's not able to get over that hump that would have made him a UFC caliber guy. He wasn't able to ever really get over that hump that would make him, an elite level guy. But is he capable of fighting lower mid-range guys all day? That hand, he's caused it to not be a handicap to him, right? He uses it as a hook extremely well. He's got a nasty guillotine choke, not able to clasp his hands together because he's only got one of them. Has a nasty guillotine choke on him. A lot of these guys, like Baxter Humby was a one-armed fighter as well. He was a kickboxer, but they rely on their kicks a whole lot more, and the kicks start to develop. That's something that Newell at range, he'll kick a lot. And then as far as being in the clinch go, he's a very strong guy. When he's on the ground, I mean, you wouldn't even know that he has one hand. I mean, he attacks the neck routinely. It's something that he does really well. It's that, again, he's 35 years old at this point. He hasn't fought in almost 2 years. And he wasn't able really to get over that level to begin with. He was on a great run. There was a great story. He loses to Justin Gaethje, right? That's fair. Who doesn't lose to Justin Gaethje? Totally understandable, right? It goes on from that Gaethje loss, but the wins, it's all the same thing. Keon Caldwell, Saba Fide, Joe Codon, Tommy Marcelino, Sonny Luque. Those guys are actually all good regional fighters, but none of them ever went on to anything beyond that. I think Keon Caldwell might have tried out for tough. Saba Fide was a local Canadian guy. Joe Codon, they never went beyond anything. The next time he takes out Gaethje, that's the one loss. The next time he tries to step up against Alex Munoz, he loses, right? Alex Munoz, Team Alpha Male, All-American wrestler, strong, stout guy. It's on Contender Series. This is a chance. You win this, maybe you get a contract with UFC. That's that next time he took the step up and he loses. Going back to fighting a 10-11 opponent, he wins. Back to fighting Corey Browning, 5-2, Bellator, he wins. But that Manny Muro fight, 10-6, he loses a split decision. First round, he goes out there, he gets the takedown. He controls Manny. He actually threatens with the guillotine choke, causes Manny to actually fall to the ground and try to get a little bit of relief from the pressure. And from there, he maintains pretty solid top control, wins the first round. So we got a one-round with Newell. Second round starts out, Newell again, he's able to clinch up with him. He's able to get him towards the cage. He's kind of like doing a hip ride up against the cage for, 2-3 minutes of the round. But then Manny Muro is able to reverse and end up on top. And when he ends up on top, Newell doesn't escape. So I guess two of the judges gave it to Muro. One of them gave it to Newell. And then the third round, Newell kind of runs out of gas. The problem is that Manny Muro, 10-6 opponent, really did represent, at first he was losing to that, you're jumping up, Alex Munoz, Justin Gaethje. Now you're losing to that journeyman level of opponent. That's 2 years ago. You're coming back as a 35-year-old now, and you're taking a step up theoretically in Bobby King. Kind of a problem. He's also had some injuries that have piled up along the way. I mean, all this stuff is just cause for concern. As far as Bobby King goes, he's more of a submission guy, and I think that's where Nick Newell is going to be able to shine a little bit, is that looking at Bobby King, I mean, he's a Hawaiian fighter, but he's fought almost exclusively out of the Utah regional scene, which is, for my money's worth, one of the lowest level of regional scenes across the entire United States. And a lot of those wins are against some lower level guys. So again, a 5-5 Andy Perez. Next fight, 10-17 Kerry Latimer. He gets taken down twice in the Kerry Latimer fight, which is, again, cause for concern. Subs him at the end of the first round. Sure, that's expected. But I don't think his counter wrestling is all that good. And again, that's something that's going to play towards Nick Newell. The very next fight, Dustin Jenkins, 2-2. Nate Kirwe, 5-3. That's actually one of his more notable wins, is the 5-3. Then he loses to Fabio Serrao. Now, Fabio Serrao was another one of these guys, Brazilian, but lives out of Utah, trains out of Utah. He was another exclusive Utah regional scene fighter. And Fabio Serrao handles him, LFA 66. From there, he just goes back to that same run. He'll beat lower level guys. And then it culminates with a fight for the King of Utah, right? And if you're going to fight for the King of Utah, you got to fight the King of Utah, which is Steven Seiler. And you know what? I'll give him one thing. He subbed Seiler fourth round with an armbar. I haven't been able to find the fight. Subbing Steven Seiler is extremely impressive. I don't know how the first 3 rounds went, though. And so if Siler was winning the first 3 rounds and then he got caught in the 4th round, again, this is only a 3-round fight. I wouldn't have to worry about that. I do think this kid's probably going to have Newell's 35. He's 37. I think Bellator is trying to do Newell a favor there. We're not bringing him in against some up-and-coming prospect that's looking to make a name. They're giving him a guy, 37 years old, been fighting a long time, has never really reached any type of notoriety in his professional career. Seems winnable. It's grappler versus grappler. It's like, I think Newell should be able to get these takedowns and should be able to control at least the better part of 2 rounds. I think this thing probably goes the distance. It seems like King's more of a grappler himself. He hasn't been submitted since, I mean, dude, he just submitted Steven Siler. That tells you his grappling's pretty good. And he's never been submitted before, right? Newell's not knocking him out. I don't even know why I just laughed right then. That's probably disrespectful. I don't think Newell knocks him out. I don't think Newell submits him. This thing's probably getting in rounds. And then cardio does not favor Nick Newell. It actually favors Bobby King. So if you are betting Nick Newell, if you are backing Newell, gun to my head choice, I'm taking Newell. Not a whole lot of faith in it. But again, the key here is going to be win the first round. Sure, that's expected, I think. Bobby King's going to win that 3rd round. We need to win that 2nd, or at least the better portion of the 2nd. Same thing that happened in the Manny Muro fight, and we didn't win it. So again, if you're looking for a live underdog, actually, Bobby King might be your guy. But I'm going to say that Bellator knows what they're doing, and they're giving him a winnable fight. And I think that King just hasn't fought, and obviously he hasn't fought a guy like this before, but I don't mean that in, style-wise. I mean skill-wise. I mean experience-wise. Like, Nick Newell actually has at least fought at an elite level, come up short, but fought on big shows before, and Bobby King just quite honestly hasn't. So I will ever so hesitantly go with Nick Newell to get the job done. Taiwan Claxton versus Justin Gonzalez. Again, this is going to be another interesting fight. Taiwan Claxton should have, he should be a threat out there. He should be a legitimate prospect. The guy wrestled pretty high level. I mean, he was at Ohio University. Did pretty good. I think he got an injury, held him out of his senior year, or it was something like he got, the NCAA changed their eligibility rule, and he got, that's what it was. They changed their eligibility rule on him, and he wasn't able to wrestle his senior year. But prior to that, it looked like he was certainly coming along, and he is a pretty good wrestler. Guy is an awesome athlete. And as far as he comes to MMA goes, there's a brief period of time there where Taiwan Claxton's on record being like, I coach myself. And it's like, well, that's only going to get you so far. His wrestling gets him so far. And then eventually it's like it's going to catch up to you. They put him in the Bellator featherweight tournament. It's for $1 million, similar to PFL. You got to run through the tournament, win the finals, you get the $1 million. He's 6-0 at the time. Like, what's he doing in this featherweight tournament against their best guys, the best guys on the roster in this tournament? What's Taiwan Claxton doing in there? And he draws Emmanuel Sanchez in the first round. Takes Emmanuel Sanchez down in the first round, like, nice outside trip. And you see where this guy's wrestling's at, but beyond that, you see where his athleticism's at. The thing is that beyond that wrestling and athleticism, there's no top control. There's no real top game. And so Emmanuel Sanchez gets back up. And then when Sanchez is back up, he's just a much better striker. See, Emmanuel Sanchez is diverse. He's versatile. He'll throw punches. He throws kicks. He'll throw elbows. He'll throw everything. He catches you off guard a lot. Claxton, even though he's a great athlete and is explosive, it's more just one and done striking. He'll come over the top of the right hand. He'll throw the jab and then come over the top of the right hand. He'll throw the body kick, but there's not enough. He's not tying enough of it together. He could get away with it earlier, but not against a guy like Sanchez who's been there, done that. In fact, Sanchez fought for world title 2 fights prior, and Claxton's 6-0. Like, what do you think's going to happen? So in the second round, he loses the first round, by the way. He gets 2 takedowns, looks good for about 3 minutes, gasses out. Manuel Sanchez mounts him at the end of the first round. Manuel Sanchez actually takes him down at the end of the first round, mounts him, puts a bit of a beating on him. Second round starts. You can see that Claxton's tired, and then as soon as the fight creates a scramble on the ground, I don't want to say he gives him the triangle, but he actually gets out of the first one and then ends up with his arm same in the back, same position. So call it fatigue, call it all of these different things. That does cause him to bail out on being his own head coach and go to Elevation Fight Team. That should have been him turning the corner. Now he's at Elevation, one of the best fight teams, one of the best teams in the world. You're at the altitude. You're going to be able to work on that cardio. You've just got a plethora of training partners to work with. He comes out of this Brennan Akion 3-0. It doesn't all look all that good. Wins every round, 30-27 across the board. Doesn't opt to use his wrestling until the third round. Just outstrikes him the first 2. Doesn't look great doing it, but does outstrike him. And then the third round finally uses his wrestling a little bit, and that's probably his most definitive round. But not a great performance out of him, to be honest. And then you get the J.J. Wilson fight. So J.J. Wilson missed weight by 3 pounds. And in my opinion, maybe they should have given Taiwan Claxton the fight on the basis of it was a really close fight, split decision loss. But J.J. Wilson missed weight. But to be quite honest, like, looking back at it, the problem is that Claxton just doesn't do enough. And J.J. Wilson doesn't really do anything either until like a minute left in the first and the third. And that minute left wins him those 2 rounds, 2 out of 3. He wins the 29-28. And again, Claxton just presses him up against the cage in the first round. J.J. Wilson does land the better exchanges as far as striking goes. But whenever Claxton would get it to the ground, there's just nothing out of him. He's one of these wrestlers that can get you down, but kind of just holds on to. He's not actively looking for ground and pound. He's not actively looking for the finish. I'm sure he's making improvements. He's only 28 years old, and he's full of confidence. If you see any of the interviews with him, it's like, this guy truly does believe he's a premier martial artist still. You need that self-belief. You need that self-confidence. But the results in the cage, it's like he's stagnant in what he's doing. And to be honest, I really don't see the improvements. To me, he looked better in the Emmanuel Sanchez fight than he did in the Brennan Acquiao fight and the J.J. Wilson fight. The ironic thing there is that was the last fight he was training himself for. So I don't honestly see the improvements. Now, Justin Gonzalez, this guy was my boy. He is my boy, really. I mean, I've been, anytime he's fought on a show that's offered a betting line on him, I've jumped on it. I think he's tough. I think he's one of these guys that's gritty, but he's another one of these guys that's in Colorado, got good gas tank. It's that he might potentially be a step behind Taiwan Claxton in a couple departments. And that's what makes it a little bit worrisome. As an amateur, he's 9-0, right? Just runs through the amateur ranks as a stand-in amateur. As a professional, undefeated, runs through the ranks, and not taking all these easy fights, man. I just look 4 fights into his pro career, he beats Nick Rhodes. Nick Nightquill Rhodes was a legitimate regional show guy. He was at a team Wild Man with Thomas Denny. Won a local title up here in Canada one time over Kurt Southern, who was a legitimate Canadian featherweight. Nick Rhodes is solid, man. Very next fight, he beats Derek Brennan, 6-0. Derek Brennan, upstate New York guy. Again, guy that wrestled collegiately, D3, but solid athlete, solid fighter all around. Drew Brokenshire, 26 pro fights. Bruno Ferreira, 8-1 Brazilian on the LFA card. Zach Zane was actually touted to be pretty good. He had a ONE FC contract in the bag until a brain scan had he had a cyst on his brain. So ONE FC's like, yeah, we can't give you a contract. But again, Zach Zane, tough fighter. He's not just fighting nobodies to build his record. He's fighting the best guys on that local regional scene that are available to him. Now against Jake Childers, it's for the LFA title. This is a good spot for him. He was on the Contender Series against Zach Zane. Wins the 30-27 across the board. Mauls Zach Zane. Takes him down 10 times. Great performance, but not enough for Dana. Dana likes finishes. Dana doesn't give reward him the contract. LFA says, you know what? Why don't you come in here? We'll give you a title shot. And he mauls Jake Childers, man. Jake Childers looked really bad, though. I'm not sure why they selected. I'm not sure how he got to 8-0. And I'm not sure why LFA selected him for the title shot, because he looked so out of place in there against Gonzalez. But again, maybe that's a feather in Gonzalez's cap. The striking is a little bit robotic, and Taiwan Claxton's going to have a big-time speed advantage on him. But Gonzalez likes to grapple. That's his thing. He loves the clinch. In fact, his best striking is in the clinch. He's got good body shots. He's got a good single collar tie, uppercuts up the middle, loves just the dirty boxing, and he'll rough you up. But his biggest thing is that he just keeps coming at you over and over and over again. But he loves to eventually wrangle these guys to the ground. He's going to have a problem against Claxton in the wrestling department. He's going to have a problem with Claxton in the speed department. But the more I think about it to myself is Claxton will look really good in that first round because of the speed, because of some of that wrestling. But I think Gonzalez is just going to keep on him, keep grinding, keep coming at him, and Claxton has this thing where he'll start to fatigue. All of a sudden, he doesn't move quite as well. All of a sudden, the punches are one and done. And Gonzalez is a 3-punch combination kind of guy. So he'll have similar success to the way J.J. Wilson has success, which is maybe you're getting out grappled for 3 minutes of the fight, but in that open space, as soon as there's open space, you just need to get that club in him. And hopefully 2 of these 3 judges side with him. So I am going to go with Justin Gonzalez to get the job done. But I understand that Taiwan Claxton has the skills and the ability that he could make this a dicey situation for me. Kyle Kruchmer versus Levon Chockheli. Kyle Kruchmer, again, he's another one of these guys that Bellator loves. They love these guys, all-Americans, dudes that had standout wrestling careers, and then they come over and they go to a mega camp. And in Kruchmer's career, that's exactly what it's been. He wrestled at Oklahoma State University, so potentially the #1 university in the United States for wrestling, if not one of. All they do is churn out excellent guys. And if you even want a spot on the bench, you're a state champion somewhere. And in this case, Kruchmer wasn't even looking for a spot on the bench. He was a starter, 2-time All-American, 2-time Pac-12 champion. The guy was a very solid wrestler. Leaves wrestling and goes immediately to American Kickboxing Academy, where, again, you're working with wrestlers of the likes of Khabib Nurmagomedov and Daniel Cormier and Luke Rockhold and a lot of these guys that use that wrestling and have added all those other skills. It's a great spot for him to be in. However, we have seen guys like Chris Honeycutt. Chris Honeycutt never went to the same levels of wrestling, let's be honest here. But Chris Honeycutt was a solid wrestler, hard-nosed guy. Went to AKA. never got the rest of the skills going. So Kruchmer, again, it's just because he's a fantastic wrestler doesn't mean it's necessarily going to translate. He was looking good. They had him matched up pretty soft. But I mean, he wins his first 6 fights, 2-0 under the Bellator roster. Uses that wrestling pretty effectively. He's got some decent power. He's got some decent striking. You see it's working, but he doesn't really use much of his reach. He doesn't extend a lot of these punches. It's more just like one shot at a time. You can tell he's a good athlete. You can tell he's a good wrestler. But the higher level that you're going to fight, some of these guys are going to stuff the takedowns. You're going to have a little more striking. He was looking good, but he was having his way. He runs into Cameron Lachinov. He's a big favorite. I lost money on him. He's a minus 320 favorite. I'm figuring, again, All-American wrestler, probably going to have the goods to go out there, force this thing to the ground. But Cameron Lachinov is just a very difficult guy to deal with. I believe he's on the Ultimate Fighter right now, but he's very strong. He's in your face, hands low, and just a wild man, crazy, calling you on, taunting you on, wooing you on, tongue out, waving you to engage him. And that looks good to judges. Judges like that stuff. And so if Kruchmer was getting takedowns, but he just wasn't able to hold down Lachmanov. And when the fight was standing, he was landing good punches, in my opinion. But Lachmanov would just smile and just egg him on and then bomb him with a couple good punches of his own. Close fight. My opinion could have gone either way. The judges gave it for Lachmanov across the board, unanimous decision. That's fair enough. I'm not going to make an argument that it was a robbery. I'm not going to make an argument that Kruchmer definitely should have won that fight. Close fight. But it wasn't like, oh, dude, he shit in the apple pie. Theoretically, he cost me some money. But he didn't shit in the apple pie where it was like, this guy doesn't got it. It was like, yeah, okay, he's 6-0. He's young. He's green. He's never faced adversity. This was a close fight. And he took on a legitimate guy. All good stuff. So this is a rebound fight where he needs to go out there and prove something. And Levon Chockheli is a lot of he's a lot more difficult to get a beat on. It's just like, well, what does he bring to the table? He's fought in such lower level guys that debut 0-0, he knocks him out in 54 seconds. Next fight 0-0, 57 seconds. Next fight 0-1, 22 seconds. Next fight 0-0, 31 seconds. Next fight 0-0, 17 seconds. Next fight 0-0, 3 minutes. What the fuck? He goes 5-0. He fought all 0-0 guys. Do they even exist? Are these even real people? And he smokes them all in less than a minute. Who are they? Well, how's this going down? Is he some special talent? Now, he's not one when you think of fighters from Georgia, it's like powerhouse wrestling. Oh, powerhouse wrestling. But in this case, he's not actually a wrestler. He's a striker. He's strong. He's got some heavy strikes. And he's just walking down guys that shouldn't be in the cage with him and toppling them over. So he goes all the way to 7-0. 7-0, he fights a 3-4 opponent. That's his first step up. That's at least a guy with 7 pro fights. Losing record, 3-4. That's his step up, and he wins it. Now he gets Isakov's 5-0. This is officially, the first step up for him. Isakov's okay. He's signed to Brave CF right now. He lost his last fight for Brave. Decision. I mean, he's not like he's necessarily chinny by any stretch, but it's not. That's a good building block, right? You're going to have to beat 3, 4, 5 more Isakovs, move on to that next level. Gets the win, has a no contest in his next fight, but you can see where he's still middling, right? It's that his grappling doesn't look great. It looks like you could still take him down. And with his striking, he's a little bit wild still. The problem here is that he'll be able to walk down Kruchmer probably and throw some of these wild shots. And I can see Kruchmer not totally being comfortable in there. He's not a striker by nature. So if he's getting backed up, again, I could see him thinking to himself, the pressure is going to look good for the judges. But I think Kruchmer's ability, going back to this Oklahoma State University wrestling background, 2-time All-American, 2-time Pac-12 champion, he should be able to get this fight down when he needs to get this fight down. And whereas Lachmanov fought just more of a crazy game plan to just back him up and make it look aesthetically pleasing to the judges, I don't think that Levon Chockheli is going to do that. I think that he's probably just going to throw a couple bombs, get beat to the punch on a few occasions, give up a few takedowns along the way, and lose the fight. But again, when you got guys that are both young in their career, you got one guy in Levon who's just, there's not enough to go by, right? We're making some assumptions on him, and also the footage that we have seen, we do see he's a little bit flat-footed, he's a little bit wild and loopy with his striking, but he's probably going to have a striking advantage here. And we have Kruchmer, a better wrestler, but we don't know if that translates yet. Like, we've seen a lot of great wrestlers just not be able to turn the corner. And in his case, even with the takedowns, he's going to have to make sure he holds this guy down. I don't know if you can hold this guy down. No one's been doing it because he hasn't fought anybody. So because there's so many gray areas on both sides, that's the kind of fight you probably want to have a pass from. But again, if you're here looking for a prediction on a specific fight, or you have a specific feeling and you want to see if it lines up with me, yeah, I think Kruchmer goes out there and gets the job done. It's an even money pick. Could go either way, but I think he gets it done. DeMarcus Jackson, Mark Leminger, another fight could go either way. So DeMarcus Jackson, I won't waste too much time on you on this one, but he's out of Sanford MMA. And with a lot of guys out of Sanford MMA, whether it be Michael Jackson or whether it be Gilbert Burns or Michael Johnson versus Gilbert Burns, or a lot of these guys is that they have excellent first round cardio. They'll go out there, they'll beat you up the first round, and then it kind of falls off. And DeMarcus Jackson kind of has that feel to me. Like he's pretty solid in that first round, solid striking, solid wrestling. The wrestling's not solid per se on technique, but he's a strong guy and he's able to muscle you to the ground. When he does muscle these guys to the ground, he's got a solid grappling. He's got solid jiu-jitsu. He's got a good submission game. He seems to be fairly well-rounded all over. He did challenge for the LFA title against Harvey Park. Ended up getting beaten up, TKO'd in the first round. He's got a split decision to Hugh Pauly. He's got a split decision to Babit Nazarov, and he's lost to Rosh Manfio, who's in the PFL tournament. So all good guys. He's already been fighting at a pretty decent level. It's that he's coming up short against that decent level. So his last time out, Bellator signs him. He takes on Gracek Bazinian, right? And again, he's a slight favorite in that spot. It's a winnable fight for him, but it's going to be a tough fight. My issue with him in that spot was he initiated the grappling with Bazinian in the first round. I mean, he's the one that shot the takedown that allowed Bazinian to clinch up, and then Bazinian just started wearing on him. When he started wearing on him, he eventually took him down, and so Bazinian wins the first round over Johnson. Sorry, DeMarcus Jackson. Jackson now in the second round is fatigued, and so Bazinian just keeps shooting these takedowns. I mean, he's pretty just chain wrestling over and over again, right? And that just completely gasses out DeMarcus Jackson. There are a few opportunities. He does get a stand up. He does eventually get to his back up to his feet, and this is where he should be using the big striking advantage. But he's so tired and he's so worried about the grappling that he just never really gets himself going, and then he just starts falling behind on the scorecards. Now he's down 2-0 going into the third round. Starts off having a good third round, but at any point, Bazinian would just take hold of him, toss him back to the ground, and then he'd fall out of his element. I don't want to say he quit. He's a professional fighter. He's training with some of the best guys in the world. He's at one of the best camps in the world. He's obviously an excellent fighter, but when the going got tough, he just kind of accepted the positions, and that's not something I'd love out of him. Mark Leminger is going to have a durability advantage. He's going to have a cardio advantage. His striking's not as good, though, and I don't think he's as physically strong. So how Leminger would win this fight is Leminger's got to get to the ground, and DeMarcus Jackson should be able to be strong enough, good enough takedown defense to keep the fight standing. If Leminger is able to eventually muscle him to the ground, then that's where he's going to have his biggest advantage. But I honestly do think that it's a good possibility that... Sorry, my phone keeps going off, and it's fucking totally distracting me. Yeah, Leminger... I'm just kidding. Anyways, yeah, Leminger has durability advantage here. The Amasov fight, I mean, he never gets going. It's Amosov. We're going to talk about him in the main event. He's a solid guy. Massive cut opens up over him. They stop the fight. Fair enough. That's a very difficult fight to come in at Bellator debut, taking on a prospect who's 23-0 and has fought on a much higher level of competition. That next fight with Jaleel Willis, though, he gives a good account of himself. Loses the first round. He can't get Jaleel Willis down. He's losing the striking exchanges. The second round, Jaleel Willis botches a takedown attempt, and you actually have Leminger takes his back pretty slick. Once he's got his back with Willis, he rides position extremely well. You're not going anywhere. He does have a couple decent rear naked choke attempts as well. Now it goes at 1-1 heading into the third round. And again, he can't get the fight to the ground, so he ends up losing the decision. But I liked what I saw out of his grappling. The key here is he's going to have to get Jackson down. Jackson should be a lot easier to get down than Jaleel Willis. So Leminger's a live dog in that he could get him down and he should out-grapple him. But again, if I'm thinking by probability's sake, what's the more likely outcome? I think ever so slightly, Jackson just uses his physicality to keep this fight standing, and he does have a striking advantage. So that's the way I would see that one playing out. We've got Aaron Pico versus Aiden Lee. Listen, we know what we're getting out of Pico in that he was an excellent wrestler. He should have been on the Olympics. He was a standout high school wrestler, didn't even go to college. They just basically recruited him straight out of high school and put him at the Olympic Training Center, and we're like, you're going to go to the Olympics someday. He was this close at the Olympic trials to getting a run in the Olympics. And, honestly, I thought he won the match, but it was a slight judge's decision the other way, and he didn't get to represent the USA. Turns pro immediately in MMA, and Bellator's just not done a very good job of building him up. Whereas AJ McKee and Chris Brennan and those guys, or not Chris Brennan, Lucas Brennan, sorry, had that slow build. They fought young prospects on their way up. He did not have this luxury at all. They gave him in his first fight, Zach Freeman. What you have to realize about Zach Freeman is that he was 8-2, right? So he had a winning record, a solid winning record, had 10 pro fights, was already in his 30s. And his last fight, the fight before this fight with the debuting Aaron Pico, he had fought 5 rounds for the RFA title against Thiago Moises, who's in the UFC and doing an excellent job for himself. So should he have been in that spot? No. As such, he does get caught and he does get submitted in the first. The next fight, Justin Lin, solid regional fighter. Shane Kretchen, 15 pro fights, was 12-3. Next fight, Lee Morrison. Lee Morrison fought in Russia against badass Russian guys and was winning. Lee Morrison is a veteran of some solid promotions. He's also got 26 professional fights. He's also in his 30s. Why is he taking these fights? But he beats him. He gets Leandro Higo. Yeah, Higo. Title challenger. Guy just beat Darian Caldwell. Pitbull Brothers, prodigy. Again, why taking these fights? But he beats him. So we all know the skills there. Now, did he get caught by Henry Corrales? Yeah. Did he get caught by Adam Borix? Yeah. Did he need to go through those setbacks to realize, hey, man, I can't just be striking all the time. I need to mix in the wrestling. Hey, man, I've got 3 rounds to work with. I don't need to force the issue all the time, force the hand all the time. He did need those setbacks, in my opinion, and he's come back excellent from them. Bellator has now given him the debut that they should have given before. He gets Daniel Carey 7-3, Solo Hadley Jr. 8-2, John DeJesus 13-8. That's how he should have started his career. The guys he beat beforehand, Lee Morrison, Higo, that's better than what he's fighting now. But Bellator realizes, you know what? Everyone was saying he was a super prospect. We believed it, and we made a mistake. We pushed him basically near title contention within his first 5 fights. It was just too much too soon. He's still young. He's got all the skills in the world. He's been at Greg Jackson's, and they rave about it. He's been at Antonio McKee's Body Shop, and they just absolutely rave about it. He's been at American Kickboxing Academy. They rave about him. Everywhere this guy goes, all of his training partners, they all come to the same conclusion. He's a scary talent. But you don't got to rush him. Let him take his time. And that's what they're doing. Aiden Lee's a submission guy. He has his best. He did head kick his last opponent, but his best work definitely comes from his grappling. And Pico's going to dictate exactly where he wants this fight to take place. I also don't think that Lee's durability is all that great. And so I can see Pico TKOing him within 1 or 2 rounds. Again, I'm a guy that's always been on Aaron Pico since the time he debuted. When he lost, everyone laughed at me because he was a big favorite when he lost, by the way. It was like, man, you hyped this kid up. It's like, he's got a long time left in his career. Like, he's just getting started. And what you see already is this scary good. So he's only a 5-1 favorite. I think for me personally, he's going to be kind of my parlay material. I know other people are a little more hesitant. He has blown a few tickets in the past. He is still very young, but I really do like the progression that's coming out of Pico. Paul Daly versus Jason Jackson. It's solid fight. Paul Daly, for what it's worth, was my favorite fighter back in 2007. I started watching MMA in 2006. And in 2007, Paul Daly was my guy. I mean, Semtex, right? The big power, touch you and just knock you out. Come to the UFC against Martin Campbell, 3-1 underdog, lays him out. Dustin Hazlett fight, he's even money, lays him out. And then he gets Josh Koscheck, title contention. If he beats Josh Koscheck, not only does he get a title shot with GSP, but he was going to coach the Ultimate Fighter against GSP. And it's in Montreal. Me and my buddies, that's the first UFC I ever attended. We were like, we got to see our boy Semtex. We drive all the way down there. And he sucker punches Josh Koscheck after losing all 3 rounds. And that ruined him, really. I mean, he's fought in the rest of his days on the regional scene. Bellator is, a top promotion, don't get me wrong, but it's just that really did put him off to the side. All of his best fights, all of the best, days of his career could have been spent fighting top challengers. I think a lot of those got spent on the UK regional scene. He punched a guy out in a bar. That gave him visa troubles. He wasn't able to come stateside for a little bit, so he had to fight in Europe. He lost some years there. His wrestling never really got all that much better because he was unwilling to leave the confines of his own dojo in the UK. And eventually he just kind of started getting a little bit older. Now is the guy explosive? Well, that's why they call him Semtex. And he still is capable of going out there and springing something. The Lorenz Larkin knockout. Huge. The Sada Wad fight. That last fight was Sabah Hamasi. But that's what I want to talk about is that last fight with Sabah Hamasi. With Semtex, being so explosive and relying on that power is that he generally will wing hooks with you. And he was always the faster guy and he has the bigger power. So he beats you to the punch and he knocks you out. But now he's starting to slow down. He's 38 years old. He has spent a lot of time working on his grappling because how does he lose all of his fights? Grappling, right? John Fitch, Rory McDonald, Douglas Lima. You want this guy down, you can take this guy down. So he spent so much time working on his grappling that his striking is actually kind of taking a bit of a back seat. Now he's going out there and he's getting outstruck. He is a step slower than he used to be. He is a step more, less willing to engage than he used to be. And I just don't think he's still got that same big power that he used to. Capable of knocking out anybody. But with Jason Jackson, it's like he's got an excellent chin. He's been knocked out once in his entire career. And I think it's Hader Hassan like a really long time ago, and Hader Hassan, one hell of a banger. So catching him, probably not it. What you're going to have to do is go out there and outpoint him over the course of 15 minutes, and that's going to be way more difficult. Jason Jackson is the guy that does the outpointing. Has power, sure, but he's one of these guys that will just rely on the jab, the 1-2, the jab, the 1-2, and the kick, and just it looks good for the judges, man. You're always picking up points. You're outworking your opponent, and he's come a long way. He should have got a UFC contract coming out of The Ultimate Fighter. I'm not sure why he didn't. But, I mean, their loss is Bellator's gain because he's got legitimate skills and he's really coming into his own. At 30 years old now, I think you're finally starting to see him scratch the surface of his potential. But for my money's worth, since The Ultimate Fighter, he wins 3, including a win over Diego Lima, and then he breaks his ankle against Kyle Stewart. So let's just take that off the table. It's not a real loss. He shatters his own ankle, right? I mean, just bad luck, if anything, right? Then he wins 3 more, and then the Ed Ruth fight is a split decision, which I had Ed Ruth, happy Ed Ruth won the decision, disagreed wholeheartedly with it. Jason Jackson's takedown defense, it's solid, man. And his get-up game, pretty solid. Submission grappling, like his submission defense, especially solid. And then once the fight's standing, he just chips away at you. What I mean by coming into his own is the Jordan Mean fight, the Benson Henderson fight, and then to a lesser extent, the Naaman Gracie fight his last time out. You're just seeing the confidence build, the winning streak build, officially 4 fights, but for my money's worth, if he would have beaten Ruth, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 fights dating back to the Ultimate Fighter days. Last time he lost clean was when Hader Hassan knocked him out, 2013, 8 years ago. So, yeah, again, Jason Jackson's coming to his own right now. How does he match up with Paul Daly? Well, he's going to beat him to the jab. He's going to be a little bit faster. He's going to play to the outside. Daly likes to back you up a little bit, but he allows his opponent sometimes to just get off before him. And so I just think he's going to slowly start falling behind on the scorecards. The other thing with Daly is that he has a cast iron chin, but Sabah Homasi absolutely rocked his world that last time out and had him in a lot of trouble on multiple occasions in that first round. At the end of the first round, gasses. And then in the second round, Paul Daly still got a little bit of magic left in the tank, goes out there and knocks out Sabah Homasi. But 1, it was not a very good performance. 2, he did take a lot of damage. And 3, that fight wasn't all that long ago. So I think Paul's trying to capitalize on the later years of his career by getting a couple quick back-to-back consecutive fights. And if he was to put together a nice little winning streak, maybe one more crack at the title and see what happens. But Jason Jackson is the guy that has the legitimate momentum behind him, 8 years younger, good striking skill set that's going to match up incredibly well, but it's going to be the volume and it's going to be the speed that should be able to get him the job done. And then coming to the main event, we've got Douglas Lima versus Yaroslav Amosov. I've been going back and forth with this one in my head for a while now, but ultimately I think I go with Douglas Lima. Lima at 170 pounds, that's his advantage, is that he's gigantic, man, and it's very difficult to take him down. The fights that he has lost are when guys are taking him down, no doubt about that. You can literally trace all of those losses. Gegard Mousasi mixed in the wrestling with the takedowns, or the wrestling with some striking, but the takedowns what's cost him. The Rory McDonald fight, the first one, the takedowns. The Andrei Koreshkov fight, the first one, the takedowns. The Ben Askren fight, the takedowns. Those are his losses. So we know the losses are there, are the takedowns. Amosov, excellent wrestler. If Amosov's able to go and pursue those takedowns, then that is going to be his path to victory. Bear with me on this one. Yaroslav Amosov might have the greatest takedown defense and get-up game I've ever seen in my life, but his offensive wrestling doesn't really seem to be there. Like, he's not using it all that much. What he actually wants to do is stuff your takedowns and then outstrike you. That seems to be what he is. He is a wrestler's kryptonite. So yeah, 25-0. Just been ripping through the Ukrainian regional scene. Comes to Bellator, but in Bellator, Gerald Harris was a collegiate wrestler. Not great. Collegiate wrestler. He can't take him down. That's fair. And he draws Ed Ruth. Ed Ruth's a 3-time national champion. D1 national champion out of Penn State. How many national champions fight in MMA? Not a whole lot. How many 2-time national champions fight in MMA? None. Ed Ruth's a 3-time national champion. He's a Penn State Hall of Famer. The guy's wrestling's on another level. And Amosov's on record going into the fight being like, he wrestled a bunch of college kids. Like, not going to be able to take me down. He was like, okay, bud, good luck. And no, man, Ed Ruth could not take him down. And the few times that he did kind of get him down, it was like, not really. Like, Amosov would just fall to a knee and stand right back up, belly down, get right back up. You could not hold him down. It was incredibly impressive. But he wasn't trying to take Ruth down. He would stuff the takedowns, and he would outstrike him. The striking's not great. His cardio doesn't look great. But again, he's stuffing your takedowns. He knows that he's outstriking you. He's going to win the decision, and he does. Well, Mark Leminger fight, Leminger probably shouldn't have been in there, and it's a cut stoppage. Then you get the Logan Storley fight. So Logan Storley is a 6-time state champion. Wrestled at state in grade 7 and won state that year, beating a kid that was in grade 11. And then won state in grade 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-12. He's a 6-time state champion, D1 standout wrestler. Cannot take Amosov down. It's crazy. Amosov's takedown defense and get-up game, unbelievable. In fact, Logan Storley gets massively gassed out attempting to take him down. And when he can't take him down, now he's forced to strike. And Amosov is able to outstrike him. So again, the way styles have been going is these guys burn themselves out trying to take him down. He stuffs the takedowns, creates the scrambles, and then outstrikes them. But against Douglas Lima, Lima's not going to be trying to take him down. He's going to want to keep this fight standing, use those debilitating leg kicks, and just overall use his better striking. So now for the first time, it's Amosov that needs to engage the striking. Even though he's strong in the clinch and he'll be able to wear on Lima and tire Lima down a little bit, Lima's just too big at 170, man. Like, he was on an incredible roll at 170 pounds. Beats Korshkov in the trilogy match, literally just cuts right through him. First guy to beat Michael Page, literally cuts right through him. Rory McDonald fight, it's a rematch. He lost the first fight, and my God, he makes Rory look out of place. He's on a great run. And then, he pulls the old, I'm going to move up to 185 and champion versus champion, take on Gegard Mousasi. Well, that doesn't go well for people. He does live to tell the tale. Jared Villel scored 2 rounds for him. The other judges gave him 1. I gave him 1. Considering you're fighting Gegard Mousasi up a weight class, not that bad. But at 170, that's his natural advantage, man, because it's so difficult to take him down, and it's very difficult to stand in front of him. So Amosov hasn't really had to strike with anybody for a prolonged period of time. Douglas Lima should force him to do that for the first time. The only thing that does have me a little bit worried is I did watch Wayne's today, and Lima makes one hell of a cut to 170, dude. He's 34 years old. He's a bigger guy. There's probably a reason outside of champion versus champion that he wanted to fight at middleweight. If he could have beat Mousasi or even looked a little bit better in that fight, maybe there's a case that you can stay at 185, and that would have been way easier for him. But coming back down to 170 to defend the title, his face did definitely look drawn in, and I think he's going to be fine for the first 2 or 3 rounds. But again, if Amosov can win one of those first 3 rounds, force him into 4th and 5th, I could see Amosov's clinch game starting to have some success later on. If he does get this fight to the ground and has a takedown, who knows? Like, that's the way to zap Douglas's energy. But I guess I'm going to have to go with the champion to retain and Amosov to lose for the first time. But extremely intriguing fight. So quick rundown from it. We're going to go with Douglas Lima, who's slight favorite. Is that Vanessa Porto fight even still on? They get canceled. Pretty sure it got canceled. Yeah. Oh, Porto, unfit to compete. Well, yeah, good thing. Okay, yeah, anyway, so we're going to go with Douglas Lima. He's a slight favorite. We're going to go with Lucas Brennan. By this point, look, it was 9-1 when we started the show. He's 11-1 now, so money's definitely rolling in on him. DeMarcus Jackson is going to be underdog plus 105. That's one of the few underdogs I got on the card. Jason Jackson minus 240. We're going to take him. Pico's 7-1 now. He's 5-1 when we started the show. Again, you're going to want to jump on these. Justin Gonzalez is a slight minus 115 favorite. Nick Newell is minus 125 favorite. Amanda Bell's minus 120, Polizzi's 240, and Kruchmer is minus 120. So technically speaking, we do have only one underdog, but there's a lot of even money fights on this card. And as you can see, the big favorites are starting to balloon now. So I'll upload this bitch as quick as I can. And yeah, that's day 2 of our crazy long marathon of MMA betting. But let's get after it, guys. So again, thanks as always for all the support. And